Welcome. My name is Dot Porter. I am a curator in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books and Manuscripts in the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. I split my time with the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies, which is a research and development institute for manuscripts. We have physical manuscripts in our collection, which I will be showing you one today. And we also digitize all our manuscripts and do things with them, interesting things with them. We run lots of digital projects. So if it's manuscripts, we're probably interested in it. Coffee with a Codex. If this is your first Coffee with a Codex, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. So every week, we get on Zoom for about 30 minutes and talk about one or sometimes more manuscripts from our collections here at Penn. Today, we are going to be mostly looking at one manuscript, which is sitting here. This is shelf mark LJS 23. That means it's in the Schoenberg collection. This was a collection that was given to us by Lawrence Schoenberg and his family. There's another manuscript that I'm probably going to show you a little bit later, which is shelf mark LJS 384. And I'll talk a little bit, obviously, about like why I'm showing you these two together. But let's start with this one. It doesn't look like much, does it? And that's because it is in what we call a modern paper binding. It's not really modern it wasn't made like in the last 10 years. It's modern, probably 19th century, but often if you look at catalog records, they'll say modern binding, and that means sort of anything in the last like 150 years. The date of modern keeps sort of moving back. It is here. I'm also going to show you very briefly. It came with this other little book here, which I was surprised to see that there were actually two books in there, and I'll show you that one in a second. But the manuscript itself is a 13th century manuscript written in France or maybe Flanders, judging by the script that's used. And it is an incomplete copy of, let me pull up my note, De Natura Rerum, which was a text that was written by somebody named Thomas of Cantimpre, I think is how it's pronounced. He was a medieval writer in the 13th century. It was probably written, the first version of the text was finished in about 1240. And then the second version was finished in about 1244. This copy is dated to later in the 13th century, maybe 1270, which is around the time that Thomas died. So this is one of the earliest, if not the earliest surviving copy of this text, and was possibly written in his lifetime. If you have come to other Coffee with the Codices, or if you know a bit about manuscripts, you know that this is pretty unusual. Usually when we have manuscript copies of text, they're written sometimes hundreds of years after the person who wrote the text died. So for example, a few weeks ago, we looked at two copies of Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy. And Boethius wrote the Consolation of Philosophy in the 6th century. And the copies that we looked at were, I think, 14th and 15th centuries. So many, many long, hundreds of years after the text was written. And that's pretty normal. So having a book that was written potentially within the lifetime of the writer who wrote the text is very neat. This isn't to say that this was the original copy at all, and he probably never saw this copy, but it's still pretty neat to have such an early version of it. Let's see. So the work, as I said, is called De Natura Rerum, and it is an encyclopedic work, which was it's almost a genre of medieval science work, where they, in chapters, the authors will sort of write out, here's everything I know about these specific topics. And De Natura Rerum includes chapters on such things as, let's see, on the human body's anatomy, on the soul, on quadruped animals, on birds, on sea monsters, etc. Not all of these chapters are in this book. As I said, it is incomplete. The sections that are here are from books 7 through 20, but not all in the sort of what we consider to be the order that the books come in. And also sections are missing from the middle. So what I want to do is sort of, we can walk through a little bit and look at what's here and what might be missing. I want to point out, because it'll come up later, the opening fly leaves here, this is part of this modern binding, have notes on them in German in a hand that again is sort of probably 19th century or maybe early 20th century, in line with the dating of the binding. So somebody owned it. And there are also notes, if you look here, the same person put sort of little stickers in to make notes about where the texts were, I think, starting in the manuscript. So we start in the middle of a sentence here, which isn't unusual. So there's a whole section that was missing. This section is de piscibus, or de piscibus, which means on fish. So we're starting with the chapter where we're talking about fish, and we start in the middle of it there. Having the chapter titles at the top is very useful, because then you always sort of know, what's being talked about in whatever section you're in. So the writing, the script is a sort of French, as I said, it's a Gothic book hand. There's more than one scribe here. So it wasn't one person writing, multiple people were writing this. And so we'll see if we can see that as we go through here. And we've got these nice alternating blue and red initials to sort of help divide up the subsections. This would have been helpful for a reader to sort of help them keep their place. The titles at the top as well would be helpful. So there is numbering here at the top. This is page 3. This is paginated. Oftentimes these manuscripts are foliated, which means that there's a number on the front of each leaf. This is actually paginated. So there's numbers on the front and on the back. So we're going 3 and 4 here. And let's see what else. So this would have helped, since there wasn't numbering, page numbering in the 13th century when this was written, both the titles at the top and the alternating capitals would have helped a reader keep their place. So we go through here, the first quire, which is a booklet, the booklet of parchment leaves that make up this section. And it is parchment, which is an animal skin. And we'll see more, I think, later on of the texture of the animal skin. There are some notes. So here, again, I think this is that same hand, that same sort of 19th century, early 20th century hand. So somebody is not shy about writing in the margins, even fairly recently. So here we go. It was owned by a private anonymous Icelandic collector. And so I think that maybe that is who is making those notes before it sort of comes in. And it was purchased by Schoenberg, Larry Schoenberg in 1995. And so Larry had it in 95, and then it was given to us more recently than that. So I've stopped here because this is where we're going from one quire to the next. And there's something missing. There's something missing here. There's some different things going on. So there's a catchword down here at the bottom, and a catchword, as you may know, is something that you see pretty frequently, where the scribe writes the first word that's going to appear at the top of the next quire down at the bottom. And this is helpful for keeping things in order. So that word goes there. And then if you are the person who is binding the book together, then you can check to see that the first word at the top of the next quire is actually that word. And that's been cut a little bit, but I can tell, we'll take a quick look up here, that it's not the same word. There's something shorter, and then there's a couple of words that are abbreviated. And if let's go back down and take another quick look. I'm very sure that it's not the same. It starts with an I, and this does not there. So what this means is that there's something missing, whether it's just a leaf or whether it's a whole quire. I don't know, but what I can tell you is that the title has changed. So the section we were just looking at was on fish, and now we are de Werbemoos, which is, it's usually described as worms, but it's just insects. So we've moved on from fish to insects. Let's see, so I'm just taking a quick look at the chat. So Heidi asks, how do we know about the Icelandic collector and why was he writing in German? So I don't actually know that this Icelandic collector is the same person as the one who was writing in German. All I know is that in the documents that we got, it says that it was owned by an Icelandic person who then sold it to the collection of, what's his name, Patrick Gorman, who was a well-known scientist in England, who was Australian, but he lived in England, and then it was sold on to Schoenberg. So I was guessing, I don't know, actually, but the writing is in German. Let's see, and then Kelly asked, does the library insist on provenance before purchasing? Yes, but oftentimes with medieval manuscripts in particular, it's very hard unless often we get the provenance. So provenance is what's happened to anything really, but in this case, a manuscript from the time that it was written until today, who owned it, where it was physically. And these days, of course, we keep records. So if Penn has owned a manuscript, we have a record of that. If it was given to us by Larry Schoenberg, he kept records, and so we have records. But sometimes it was sold to him and it was really unclear where, especially, I think that it was not uncommon for owners to be anonymous. So if it's like, well, it was sold by this anonymous person, there's just not really a way to figure that out. I will say that Lynn has a project. The Schoenberg database of manuscripts is a provenance project that seeks to trace manuscripts, records of manuscripts going back. So it is possible to do something, say, look at Christie's and Sotheby's catalogs going far, far back and tracing manuscripts as they come into and out of, they're up for sale. Even if you don't know who was actually doing the buying and the selling, you can still sort of trace them. Yes, Lynn has, Kelly says, I am so jealous of Lynn's job. Lynn has a great job. We all have great jobs, I think, here. But that's a really useful project. Oftentimes the provenance that we have, especially early, is from things like book plates. So we'll look at a book and see who has book plates, and that can help. That can help a lot. But sometimes it's just, we just don't know. And it's still problematic to not know where your manuscripts are coming and going from. It's not as bad as like my colleagues in the museum who have to deal with, a lot more with, people who went in when there were wars. We still have to deal with that a little bit, but for something like this, it's not so much of an issue. So we're in insects. So we're in the section on insects. And again, we have a couple of these stickers at the bottom that are German. I mean, I'll just say it's German since I don't actually know if it's that Icelandic guy. A friend has put in. So we'll keep going. And there we go. You might notice as I'm turning the pages that some of the leaves have numbers down on the right-hand margin on the corner. And this is another way to help the binder figure out how the leaves fit together. So we're in the middle of a quire. A quire, again, is a booklet of the leaves. So what you have is sheets, larger sheets. So this is a sort of a sheet of parchment that's been folded to make this little booklet. We're in the middle of one, the center of one, because if I come down here, I'm in this room where there's light coming from the side, so it might not be able to see it, but there's thread here in the middle of the binding, and there's thread there because it's sewn, the quires are sewn together. The quires are sewn and they're also sewn to each other. And that's actually how you make a book like that. And when you're in the center of it, you should have the same number of leaves following as you have at the start. And what these numbers are on this lower margin are saying this is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 here. So these are the first 4 leaves of this quire. So now we're in the middle of the quire. And I think that actually answers my question. I said I didn't know if there was a leaf missing or if there was a quire missing. I think there's a quire that's missing between the previous one and this one, because this is an 8-leaf quire, which is very normal. 8 leaves is very typical. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's our 8-leaf quire. And the first 4 were all counted there. Now here, again, we don't even have a catchword here. There's no catchword, but the title at the top is changing again. So it looks like there is something else that is missing. And the number down here starts with 2. There's not 1. It's Latin. Yeah, the text itself is written in Latin. It was written in either France or Flanders. We're guessing from the style of the script. There are things in there that indicate that it was written in France or Flanders. And actually, I'm just noticing this is a place where not only are the titles different, the script is different. These two facing pages were written by different scribes. And I think you can tell, I can tell, I'm used to looking at these, but let's take a look. So the initials or the capitals look pretty similar. But the writing itself, the ink here is a little more brown than this, which is a little more black. And this just looks neater. I think this scribe was a little bit better, maybe a little more careful. This looks a little bit more messy to me. A little more, I don't know, like he wasn't being quite as careful. So that's those are 2 of our scribes. I think this one is sort of the main scribe. And then this is one of the secondary scribes. Yeah, okay, Bran is pointing out letter shapes like the D are totally different. So let's see, so there's a D there. And oh yes, look at the Ds. The Ds are very different. Thanks for noticing that. So different. That's one way that you can tell when you're dealing with different scribes. The A is different too. Let's zoom back in and take a quick look at the A. Let's see, where's an A? So there's the A over here, and where's an A? Oh yeah, so this A has a quite little round top, and this one is a little bit more pointy. So it's the same script. So we would still say that both of those are, it's like a Gothic script, but the scribes are having slightly different letter forms. So that's great. So now, all right, so what section are we in? We are in De Arboreus Communibus, which is common trees. So we've moved on from insects to trees. Here we go. And as I'm turning, you might notice little sort of marks down this right side of the page. I don't know, can you see that? These marks down the right side of the, here we go, of the page, and you might see them on the left side at the other side. Those are called pricking marks. And what they are is it's part of the setup for the page. And you put pricking marks on either side of the sheet and then draw a line between the marks to make the line that you do the writing on. So that's how they're able to keep their writing straight. I'm not seeing, sometimes it's in ink and you can actually see the lines. Oh, I see them a little bit maybe down. If you look in them between them, oops, what did I just do? Oh, I don't really see it. I can see it where I am. I don't think it's showing up on the phone. Maybe down here. You can see it a little bit. So that's how they keep the lines straight. Now I'm going to come back up here. Let's see. Now we're back. I just went through that choir very quickly, and now we're back to the other scribe. We have another sticker. We have more notes written by that modern 19th century person. And we are in the section on the 7 celestial regions. And I haven't been mentioning the book numbers, which is sort of, that's another interesting thing. So first we were in book 7, then we went to book 9. So we skipped book 8 completely. Then we went in book 10. Now we're in book 16. So the Erebos, wait, no, I think I skipped one. Oh, we skipped some. This is book 11. So we went 10, 16, 17, 11. So why is this happening? I don't know. I don't know if the person who bound these quires out of order, or if the order of the books has changed. I kind of think that it's the person who bound it just sort of bound it out of order. And I'd want to take maybe a closer look at the numbers down in the right-hand corner to help figure that out. Like, I feel like there's a lot that could be looked at in this book, and probably has been, since it's a very early copy of it. Let's see, I see that Randy has a question. Written with quill pens and their own inks. Yes, so they would have probably made their own ink, and it would have been written with some kind of quill pen as well, which could also be something that makes the difference between the two hands, because if they were writing with different pens, they could have been cut differently, and maybe one of them has a wider writing area, and the other one has a thinner writing area. Here, and again, let's see, we're going from one text to another one. There was actually a text that changed, I think, in the middle of this choir. So we're not completely missing things, but in this case, we have another instance where we're moving from book 17 to book 11. And then there's something that's not, that would have been there originally. Well, this would have been it would have been in a different place in the manuscript. All right. So I think here we go. We haven't seen many of these. I don't know if we've seen any, but towards the later part, there are some sort of illuminated or colored initials. And it's like a little dragon who's chewing on his tail, if you can see that. So that's sort of a fun and pretty, pretty one. I've been noticing too, in manuscripts from this period, a lot of this sort of blue and pink together. So that could be another way to help us sort of date it there. Let's keep going. Here we are, the end of another choir. And again, we have a catchword that doesn't match the next line. And we have a different book. Now we're book 18 on air motions up here. So we're in the air motions. And we only have a couple of minutes. So I just want to get to the last one. Ooh, that's pretty. Here's another initial that's very nice. So the last chapter in this that Thomas wrote is chapter 20. And this is one that he added. Remember at the beginning, I said that he wrote the first version of this in 1240 and then the second version in 1244. And the second version added book 20, which is on stars and eclipses. So this was about astronomy. And he pulls from a lot of different writers over the course of this text. So he wasn't making this up, right? He was reading a lot of other stuff and he was pulling it together, which again is something that a lot of authors do. He was reading a lot of Aristotle. I think Aristotle was one of the major writers that he was looking at. But for chapter 20, which is on astronomy, he was looking at another writer who was actually pretty close to his own period, and that is William of Conches, who wrote this text on astronomy. And so I just want to take a quick look at this, which is the original. This is the text that Thomas would have read as he was writing chapter 20. Again, probably not this exact manuscript, but this text. And this one is interesting for the same reason, for one of the same reasons that our manuscript of Thomas is interesting, because this is a very early copy of this text. De Philosophia Mundi is the name of the text. And this is a very early surviving copy, again, possibly written within William's lifetime. So not that he wrote this manuscript or that he ever saw it, but that his text was popular. It was popular, very popular throughout the Middle Ages. Clearly, if Thomas was copying it or using it as a source for his own, and it was already being copied within his lifetime. So I like this because it has some nice diagrams, and they're incorporated into the text here. So there's some nice diagrams, shows some nice planning on the part of the scribe. So I just wanted to show that really quickly right at the end. Now it's 12:30, so it's time to say goodbye. I'm going to take one quick look at the thing and see if any more questions. All right, great. Well, thank you so much for coming. I hope you'll come again, and we'll look at more manuscripts in the future. This has been recorded, and we'll be putting it up on YouTube if you want to come back and visit it. So until next time, take care, everybody, and we'll see you later.